Good morning, and let me add my welcome to this year's AI Summit in London. My name is Tim Ensor, and I'll be your host for today through an amazing lineup of speakers who are going to come and share their experience of how AI is reshaping our world. I'm part of the Cambridge Consultants team, and our mission is to help customers to develop new-to-the-world products, services, and experiences using advanced technology. And the purpose of that is to help them to become leaders in their markets. My personal focus is working with business leaders to help them with this innovation journey in artificial intelligence. Now, it's a great time to be talking about AI. AI is very much changing the way that we're interacting with the world. It's allowing machines to do things we never thought possible. And as a result, it will be creating winners and losers in every sector. But I think now more than ever, it's right that we reflect and ask the question, where are we? Where have we come from and where have we got to? So firstly, of course, it's clear that this is a virtual event and most of us are at home. We'll have all become familiar with scenes like this as we increasingly juggle home and work life together. And I've become a great fan of being able to meet some of my colleagues and clients' children over video conferences over the past few months. It's also been a fantastic time to see the hard work of the AI Summit team, who've been bringing us all of the great experiences of the physical AI Summit in this virtual event. And I want to emphasize that the same opportunities are here for us today as in the event. There is the same great lineup of speakers. There are all the same opportunities to network with each other, to share experiences and make new contacts. And there are also the same opportunities to meet with exhibitors who are on hand to help. And so I'd encourage us all to make the most of this event and explore all of the areas that it can help you. Now, of course, we can't really go much further without also recognizing that we're in the midst of the biggest upheaval that we've seen in a generation due to the COVID pandemic. Now, for many of you who were here at last year's AI Summit, that venue, the Excel London, is now a hospital. As many of you will know, it was turned into the Nightingale Hospital to offer the capacity for up to 4,000 COVID patients to be treated. And thankfully, it's not really been needed much so far. But clearly, COVID has changed the world as we know it. Now, for our part at Cambridge Consultants, the government asked us for help in ensuring the supply of ventilators at the beginning of the pandemic. And during March and April, some of our team worked around the clock. And in 6 weeks, we went from a blank sheet of paper to a fully functioning, fully documented, tested and regulatory approved ventilator to ensure the healthcare workers always had the tools that they needed to look after us. Now, thankfully, again, that has not been needed, but it has been an amazing time to see teams pulling together to deal with what is a tragedy otherwise. And I suspect that through the rest of today and tomorrow, we will hear how COVID has impacted many of our speakers, their organizations, and their teams. Now, one thing we can say about how technology is helping us to deal with the current way of life is it's turning the world into a flatter world than I think we've seen before. It is allowing us to do almost everything virtually, including this event. And we are now being able to interact globally across locations, I think, with even less friction than we have up to now. I had an example of a project team recently, which was working across 13 time zones from Boston to Tokyo, with the UK and Singapore involved too. And it was no different to having the whole team in the same room. I'm here in Cambridge today for this virtual summit, and we've got speakers from around the world joining us. And later this month, I'll also be working with our US team for the Silicon Valley event, but also presenting that from Cambridge. Now, here on this screenshot is an example of where some of my colleagues, 150 of them in fact, from the US offices, joined together to sing happy birthday to one of our colleagues over Zoom. So everything is possible virtually, even if that wasn't necessarily a pretty example. So in AI now, it's also worth recognizing that in 2020, that is the 65th year of developing artificial intelligence. And this definition here is still the best one that I'm aware of from the original coiners of the term, about how we take technology to allow machines to exhibit behaviors which would otherwise be called intelligent if a human were doing it. And this is still really the best definition I know of. But of course, finally, we are 1 year further on in the current AI renaissance. Now, this is still moving at a staggering pace, and sometimes it's difficult to keep up. One of the things we offer to some of our clients is a tech watch, where we keep track of the latest trends in AI to keep them up to date. And I've pulled out just 3 examples, 2 which are high impact changes happening now, and 1 which is an indication of more changes still to come. So the first one, I think, is an area we've seen in the last year that AI is really starting to grow up. The rise of the term ML ops, that is machine learning operations, has really brought into sharp focus what it takes for organizations and teams to manage the day-to-day development and delivery of machine learning. And a lot of thought has gone into that over the last year. The other area of big capability announcement this year was about machines starting to learn language like humans. And this was around the OpenAI's GPT-3 model, which many of us will have heard of. This was a language model 10 times larger than we'd seen previously. And that allowed that model to, with very little fine-tuning or extra training, do a wide range of language tasks which otherwise would require a human. So, for example, doing language translation, question and answer, even correcting English grammar, or actually even learning 3-digit arithmetic purely as a result of word association. Truly amazing. And the final one is a sign of something to come, I think, which is AI making AI. And there was a particularly interesting Google Brain paper published this year about how their team had looked at the area of auto ML and had started to take it right back to basics. So getting AI to build new algorithms using only fundamental maths building blocks. I very much think this is a sign of things to come, and auto ML will be with us, and it's something we're going to keep an eye on. So if you'd like a little bit more insight into the AI renaissance, we've written a white paper on that, and that's available from the friendly team at our exhibition booth. Do go talk to them. So now, thinking forward, last year we were thinking very much about how to get AI through proof of concept. This year, I think the question is much less what can AI do, and more about how do we scale it up to get to value. Very recently, Capgemini published some research which was really encouraging. It showed across many, many sectors, a good number of organizations were pushing AI through to production. 11% of the people they talked to were getting AI into production in several areas of their business, and were seeing it scale up. And a further 41% were starting that journey. They'd got AI into production on at least a limited scale. So that shows that now 50% of those organizations are starting to get AI into production. And I think that is a big step forward on where we were last year. But one observation I have on that data is that I believe the services that we're getting into production today are very much based on third-party products and tools. And we're pushing those through into scale up and getting value, which is fantastic to see. But I think another exciting point that we're at the moment is being able to start using AI as it's becoming democratized, that organizations are starting to build their own in-house original innovation in AI, doing their own unique developments, which will push through to even greater levels of value for those organizations. Now, that sounds great, doesn't it? But how do we get there? I have these 3 areas that I think are important to think about when scaling original innovation in AI. The first is building firm foundations. That's about the basics, your infrastructure, tools, and team. The second is about delivering in increments, having a philosophy of minimum viable intelligence. And the third, I think, is often overlooked, but is around continuous invention. And that's about continuing to invest in research to improve the performance of those AI models. Now, each of these is a presentation in its own right, and I'd be happy to talk more with anyone in the breaks. But let's look at those briefly. Firstly, any AI innovation is built upon your team and their tools. So let's start with the team first. And we're discovering that any AI innovation actually is requiring a collaboration of many teams. There is your data science team at the center who will build the algorithms, neural networks, and AI. But they need to be working with the data engineering team to make sure the data is in the right format for those algorithms to use. And also an ML engineering team, whose job is to deploy those algorithms into your IT systems or to the embedded platforms that they'll run on. Now, clearly, those teams need to be supported by their infrastructure, and we run this on-site supercompute cluster in our offices in Cambridge, and that is very much about allowing the team to get the most out of that asset. It allows us to experiment and explore widely across what our models are capable of doing, and it allows our team to be right up close with what it takes to really optimize the performance of that infrastructure. And finally, the tools. Now, your team obviously will be able to deliver much better work if we have good tools. And this is an area which is evolving fast and is also worth some thought, because many options are there. Not all tools are equal, and often it is difficult to change later. So investing some time and thought in what tools you give to your team and how that fits into their workflow is going to give them the best chance of success. So once you've built your firm foundations, what do you do with them? Now, scaling up any AI innovation should be delivered in increments. And we always start when we're working with clients with the ambition. What is your ambition for a valuable product or service or experience? And then breaking that down to quickly prove the concept with data and data science, build a well-engineered scalable platform, and then launch the service. And by launching a first minimum viable intelligence system, you can collect data from users and increase the ambition of the next increment and go around again. Now, this approach is particularly powerful where you don't have enough data to begin with to achieve the performance you want all in one go. And it allows you to plan a way forward where a proof of concept for your big ambition might otherwise get stuck because you can't achieve the necessary performance all in one go. And that brings me to the third element, which I believe is needed to get your AI projects off the ground. And as we iterate then towards that final goal, you need to inject some new capability by adding research. Now, for some applications, the level of performance needed may require advanced techniques, even on the first iteration. I'd like to share some examples of emerging areas that we're working on to help get our AI projects off the ground. And this is the kind of research we do behind the scenes to give our clients the edge. The two examples I'll share with you is in the area of delivering better perception at lower cost, and also helping AI to learn a sense of intuition to cope with complex real-world problems. So firstly, this is a piece of research which contributes to the issue of reducing cost in autonomous driving and other autonomous platforms. Now, the ideal data for AI engines to make decisions on in autonomous platforms is high resolution depth. And today you can get that from fairly costly high resolution LiDAR. But we've been thinking about, could you do the same with camera and radar, which would be much lower cost? And so this model we've built takes those two inputs. It takes camera and low resolution depth and fuses them together to give high resolution depth images. And this is an example of research which can impact the economics of your innovation to allow you to scale up. The next example is some research I'm really excited about, which is aiming to help machines deal with the complexity of the real world. So for reference, some tasks that humans deal with are really, really complex, even though you don't realize. Now there are 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the visible universe, but a game of chess has 10 to the power of 120 options. A traveling salesman problem with 200 stops, which actually is equivalent to the average day of an Amazon delivery driver, has about 10 to the power of 375 options. And Go, which we've seen AI triumphing in over humans in recent years, is even more complex than that. Now, what we've been looking at is how do we take the examples and the experiences that humans learn at a very early age of using intuition to solve these highly complex problems. And we've been inspired by the challenge of actually building a structure. Placing blocks one on top of another is a similar problem with many, many options. And also one where you can't evaluate how well you've done until you get to the end. And so we've built an AI agent to do just that. And here we've got an example of that agent building a bridge. Now, during training, it had to discover for itself what a bridge was and which forms work. And even for a bridge this size, there are about 10 to the power of 14 options available for it. It has to use physics to look at the friction and strain and gravity to evaluate what a good bridge is. And even then, it can only make that evaluation at the end. So it has to use its judgment about what is likely to work best. And as I mentioned, this is dealing with a huge number of options, 10 to the power of 14. But our agent only had to consider 480 of them. And so that shows it is 10 to the power of 11 times more efficient than brute force. Now, this kind of technique could enable chatbots to start driving a dialogue to an outcome with an outcome in mind, rather than just doing question and answer. It could help with the experiment design to discover new chemical formulations or medicines. Or it could help with really complex routing or logistics or availability problems where there are just too many complex options to consider for machines. So this is an example of research which will help drive the performance of your AI in the real world as you help scale it up. The examples of these demos, and also another one looking at tuberculosis management in low-resource countries, are all available on our exhibition booth. So go chat to the friendly team there and they can explain more. So we've thought about the three examples of investing in basics, firm foundations. We've thought about minimum viable intelligence, delivering in increments. And finally, we've thought about continuously investing in research. And I think those three will help us to scale up AI innovations. So for this conference, I'd love us to be thinking about that. So together, I would encourage us to be sharing our thoughts and experience on how are we all doing in pushing AI innovation to scale? And what experiences do we have in delivering original innovation? Things that we've designed and built ourselves in our own organizations to give unique value. And I think with this group gathered together in one of the most forward-thinking cities in the world, we definitely have the opportunity to find new solutions to these challenges.